Hey, good morning. I'm Colonel Greg Griffin. I am the JRSS PMO, and thank you for coming to our session this morning. We've gathered here, I would say, the core 06 level leadership that has everything to deal with the JRSS system that is being deployed out across DOD and helping to centralize and standardize the architecture at the mid-tier level. I've got Colonel Lisa Whittaker here, who's the commander of the DISA Global Operations Center. I've got Colonel Darlene Straub, who is the DISA DCO chief, and I also have Colonel Jordan Cochran, who is the J5 out of Joint Force Headquarters DODIN. The format that we plan to go through today is a brief panel where we have just a very few slides here. We'll each talk for about 2, 3, 4 minutes to go through our slide to introduce to you what it is, what role we play for the JRSS system. And then we'll open it up for questions. So I really expect there to be about 45 minutes worth of good dialogue to get all the questions that are out there answered, and really to make sure that there is no confusion as to where this program is going. So, and there's standard disclaimer. All right. So priorities and way ahead. So currently, you'll see we have a number of big customers and joint entities that are already enjoying the 2 tiers of our protection and transport provided by JRSS. You see our key priorities there, and really we're moving forward to really mature the environment that's out there in the operational area, providing services to customers, as well as looking forward to adding capabilities as they're needed, or tech refreshing capabilities as capacity grows, and we need to be able to keep pace with the number of customers that we have. So my role primarily is the PMO. I am the designer, the procurer, the installer, and the fielder or transitioner to operations. And so this stack, the JRSS system on NIPRNet consists of 20 stacks, of which 14 have been operationalized. The other 6 should be operationalized by the end of fiscal 19. And also 25 stacks on SIPR. None of them have been transitioned to operations at this point in time. A number have been installed. However, we want to make sure that we have all the processes, systems, and trainings in place prior to operationalizing them and putting live customers on them. And they are scattered throughout the globe to be able to provide services and protections to all of our customers throughout DOD. In CONUS, we've got 11 locations. In Europe, we've got 2 locations on NIPR and 4 on SIPR. In SWA, we've got 2 locations on both NIPR and SIPR. And out in the Pacific, we have the remaining 5 locations on NIPR and SIPR. And so those together provide an interwoven mesh of regionalized stacks that provide those services and deliver the protections that the JRSS system is designed to provide. So that picture there shows you the stack in Wiesbaden. You see it's got a number of cabinets in there. That's a NIPR stack. The SIPR stack is significantly smaller due to the threat profile out there and the capabilities that we were required to put in there. As you know, as I initially stated, the purpose is what the entire program is to standardize and centralize the transport and security, network security at the mid-tier level or at the enclave level, leaving the post-camp station on its way out to the NIPRNet. That allows us to really be able to maneuver faster the network through the things that Joint Force Headquarters DODIN provides, and also the things that DISA Global Operations Center provides. So I'll move on to the next slide and pass it on to Colonel Whittaker.
So good morning. So we at DISA Global, we're responsible to operate and maintain the Joint Regional Security Stacks. So as Colonel Griffin stated, we currently have 14 operational stacks, and at end state there should be 48 total, so there will be 23 NIPR, 25 SIPR devices or stacks. The stacks consist of over 18 plus racks of equipment that comprise firewalls, routers, IPS, and IDS equipment. And we actually manage them via the JMN, which is the Joint Management Network that the JRSS and the Joint Management System operate within. And so the Joint Management System is the tool suite that we use to manage all the devices within the JRSS. We are responsible for the operating systems, patch, and fault management, and we also operate and manage and maintain all the JRSS equipment. So we have a team that our Tier 2 is responsible to optimize the network, and we have a Tier 1 and Tier 2 entity within our JRSS NOC within our headquarters at Scott Air Force Base. They're available 24/7, and we work clearly to optimize the network again and to resolve any incidents. Under CSSP mission, we actually also continuously monitor the Joint Management Network for any type of malicious activity. And in terms of DISA CSSP support, we have customers that we support. It's SLA dependent. Well, we provide monitor service and as well as tippers and warnings to those customers as well. And you'll get a more in-depth brief on CSSP through Colonel Straub. But again, we monitor and detect and defend 24/7. And then with respect to JMN network access, we create all accounts, and we also troubleshoot for account access and permissions as required. I'll be followed by Colonel Straub.
Oops. Apologies.
Is this on? All right.
Yes.
Oh.
All right. So so Colonel Cochran, I'm the J35 at JFHQ-DODIN. So I want to briefly talk a little bit about our organizing construct. As cyberspace was designated an operational domain, warfighting domain, we've over the past 12 months, as our headquarters has matured, organizing the battle space, if you will, with that organizing construct of Operation Gladiator Shield 2017. Some of our previous panels in the week have talked a little bit about that, but I just want to highlight that because that's a foundational, seminal product that is essential so that we can fight through cyberspace in a contested environment and a constrained environment. We've organized it into 43 areas of operation, cyberspace areas of operation now that U.S. Cyber Command has elevated to its combatant command status. That includes all 10 combatant commands, all 5 service cyber components. We akin the Coast Guard as a peer service cyber component for 5 of those, and then the 29 agencies, DoD agencies, and field activities. And so all those commanders and directors with the authority to prosecute, secure, operate, and defend mission areas within their battle space are tasked and delegated those authorities so that we can ensure that we synchronize all those across all 43 of those. So that, again, that's a seminal activity. We are in execution of phase 1 of that right now. And it's not unlike the other domains that are in prosecuting warfighting functions. Identifying your boundaries, identifying your forces that are aligned, and that includes the cyber mission forces, which are the little over 6,000 teams. And then it also includes all the fixed forces, all the service CSSPs, the NOSCs, the ERTs, the red teams, all those other activities. There's over 200,000 of cybersecurity professionals in this business that provide that additional force capacity of fixed forces. We refer mainly the cyber mission forces as kind of that maneuver force, the CPTs, cyber protection teams, the cyber mission teams, and cyber support teams. And we do that synchronization through those 43 areas of operation through our daily operations and synchronization meeting and touch point with all those components. So we have situational awareness of what's going on throughout the Department of Defense Information Network. We quickly can share that cross queue and cross share that across all those components, and we do that through that cyber tasking cycle. We've just matured that as our headquarters achieved full operating capability in January, and so we've just instituted that over the last month. And so there's still lots of learning going on that, but that's a key activity. So we push out a cyber tasking order every day that does that synchronization over the next 24 to 48 hours across the totality of the DODIN, so we understand what the defensive posture needs to be and should be. And our focal point, obviously, is our operations center. It's 24/7. Within the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be moving into a new operations center within our building, which is a significant increase in our ability to do the things that we're tasked to do to command and control the cyberspace mission, the secure, operate, and defend mission. So that's the highlights that I wanted to talk about. I'll turn it over to Colonel Straub to go into the DISA side.
All right, good morning. Thank you for being here today. So you've heard Colonel Griffin and all the different efforts he has going on and all of the details Colonel Whittaker and her team are working on, and then how busy Joint Force Headquarters DODIN is. So my team right now is a supporting cast, and we're reaching through our JRSS DCO working group, and we're developing the TTPs and practices and the best way that we're going to do what this stack was designed to do, which was to be a security device. So our JRSS DCO work group currently has members from all the organizations. It has many of the customers. And how do we best capitalize upon the tools? How do we share that data appropriately? And we're working through many instances of how we're going to continue to improve that security posture. We are running a JRSS CSSP pilot to ensure that there's seamless support for our CSSP customers as they transfer from legacy network organization into our JRSS. We want to make sure that that's going to be seamless. So right now we're in the process of supporting that, making it happen, and then ensuring that when we get ready to fully go live across the board, we have the best security TTPs in place and a holistic view, not necessarily north and south, but also east and west across the network. I mean, that's what the stack was designed for. So we're still probably not out there a whole lot. You may not have heard a lot of my team, but we're doing a lot of the nug work in the background now, trying to keep that workload off of my counterparts here so that as we continue to move along, it will be ready to go and provide that security that DoD is looking for. Greg.
Okay. So, moving ahead and moving forward, as you can see, priorities and way ahead. So one of the things that when I first came on board about 7-8 months ago, was make sure it was clear what our priorities as a program were going to be, and that is simply this: we're going to minimize operational risk. We're going to increase the effectiveness of the network, and then we're going to manage the programmatic risk, and in that order. And so that is my priority going forward, to make sure that those that are already behind the network are experiencing the lowest operational risk possible, and then only then will I start looking at increasing that the operational effectiveness by putting on more tools and those kinds of things and adding more capabilities to it. As you can see, we are trying to make sure, or we are making sure that at the end of this project or this fielding, that Joint Force Headquarters DODIN can act as we want JIE to be able to support operational commander of the USCC commander to be able to maneuver the network and respond quickly and decisively to threats that are out there, while the DISA Global Operations Center makes sure that maintains that network and maintains that battle space, so that the DODIN can operate effectively out there. So at this point in time, I do have one slide of those are where some resources are, so if you want to capture that. At this point in time, I'd like to throw it open for questions, because really we want this to be a conversation, really more of an information session for folks to be able to ask us what's on your mind. I know what falls, the questions that come to me, but that's only the people who can reach me and my staff. So at this point in time, I'll ask anyone who has a question to come on up. There's a mic here in the front. I'd ask you to come up to the mic so we can all hear and you all can speak clearly. Okay.
Hi, good morning, y'all. My name is Rob Anderson, retired jarhead. I work for IBM now. So I'm interested about the stack and the you talked about the information you were being able to disseminate. I don't know if you can talk to this or not, but what I'm interested in is the C2, the command and control of the communications information, as it's distributed and acted upon between things like the McCog, 10th Fleet, Air Force, and then even more importantly, that Joint Force Headquarters that's deployed, executing a mission.
Okay. Jordo, you want to?
I could take a stab, sure. So as JRSS matures and we better understand the ability to share that information, one of the key constructs of this is to, as was mentioned on one of the previous slides, is to reduce that attack surface. So canalize the adversary so that we know what right looks like and what good looks like, so then we can better share the TTPs and the indicators of compromise, if those are apparent, across all the components, regardless of where they're at. So that's I think we'll be able to do that at speed, and we'll use our cyber tasking cycle to be able to share that through all the components on a daily battle rhythm. We're doing it now. We've done it real world for several activities over the past month. And at this level, that's about all I can say for that particular thing.
Real quick, just a couple of things also. One of the things that we've been working on kind of behind the scenes is you referenced the data, and is everyone going to have access to it? And so the DoD CIO work group that has been part of ours, and we've talked about it, one of the things we've come to an agreement recently on is that we want to make sure we use the JRSS as a data source. So not only having the data available within the JMS and in its ARC site and how it's currently configured, but also being able to share it and use it. So Army right now is looking at, it pulls it outside into its own and substantiation of its own data so then it can see and use it, do some of its own Army flavor with it. DISA, you're right now also using ELK. So again, using JRSS in the most flexible way possible, not as a limitation to our organizations, but how can we use that data to become more powerful and more knowing about what's in the network. So those discussions are taking place. I don't think a final solution has been decided upon within the work group, but I know we're looking at different ways on how we share the data, making sure it's going to be available, and the services get a vote on how they use that data within that stack also. So we have the JMS that we're working on. We're working on those TTPs of how the data is shared in there, but then we're also looking at how do we pull it out and have that service flavor to that data also. But the final solution's not, I don't think, completely worked through, but we're working on it. So it is definitely on the table for discussion.
And currently, though, right now at DISA Global, when we identify information, we actually send out tippers to the services, so you can action it depending on what it is and how it impacts your specific service as well as appropriate.
Right. And so, if I could just don't you keep doing the gopher thing here. The system as designed, as Colonel Straub was alluding to, to be flexible and be able to use as a data source, but also once we standardize the platform that everyone is on, sharing those mitigations natively will be much easier. So those tippers that Lisa sends out or her team sends out will be much quicker to implementation because they'll already be in all of the right syntax on all the right equipment that's already out there. So it'll just be a matter of the service to receive it and go, yep, this is exactly the way we want it, or maybe I'll make this little tweak and boom, it's in. As opposed to now, many times they've got to recreate or reformat for their own particular devices that they have.
So with all the data that's being distributed from the stack and as it's filtering down, are you all looking at executing cognitive analytics to do big data prediction? I mean, predictive analysis, the mountain of information that's being generated. Are you all starting to look at that kind of stuff?
Yes. So there is. So, y'all, I'll take that as the bigger picture of DISA. Yeah. That is another program that is butted right up against mine. And that's the data analytics that's under Dr. Jim Travis in DISA, and there is also a number of independent things that are being worked in the Army, in the Air Force, in the Navy, and there the Jim Travis's group under Amanda Vilwalk is, or I think I reversed that. Amanda Vilwalk works for Jim Travis. She's the one who is not only leading the effort within DISA, but also synchronizing with all the other groups that are out there to make sure that the different directions or different flavors that they're all trying, they work and get the best best lessons learned out of all that to try to get to a good synchronized product at the end. Did that help?
And that comes together in that JRSS DCO work group where we have those DCO discussions. So those the people that he just mentioned, that all of those come together very regularly to have those discussions, and it's definitely on the table.
Yeah. Any other questions? Come on, this is a big crowd. There ought to be. Yes, sir. A little louder, sir.
The number of users that you anticipate participating in the stacks, any idea?
I believe it will be over 3 million. At current count, it's 850,000 users, and so it'll easily get over 3 million. I mean, I don't know what the actual final count in the DoD network is, on the different, on at least on Nipper. Sipper, I think there'll be a lower count because there's no fewer users on Sipper. But yeah, we're pushing the bounds.
How about the performance of the stacks? How's that going?
So I'll take the first whack at that, then I'll pass it along to the rest of the panel. The performance of the stack is, depending on location, is having different levels of performance for those who are behind it. So we are approaching capacity on certain functions, and there is one in particular that is causing an actual operational impact, and we are actively pursuing, trying to get after and make sure that to remove that capacity issue and try to improve. We've done a number of things actively with the current gear, and then we're aggressively going after some alternate mid and long-term solutions for that. So we do anticipate to need to continue to grow capacity within the spend plan for my program that gets approved by the JIE-XCOM or Executive Committee. That's the folks down in the Pentagon who tell me what I can and cannot do with money. Each year there is a line in there for not only for tech refresh to get the best and brightest of a certain capability that should be able to do things faster and increase capability. There's also a capacity line in there to be able to fill out capacity as capacity grows. So as we get to those top numbers, as we're bringing on the additional services, I do expect that the capacity in the stack will need to grow, but we also expect that we'll not have to grow its footprint any, because as we have seen in recent history, as capacity, as technology has improved, the form factor has gone down while its throughput has gone up. So that's the direction we are heading. And I think the person who right there is on the front lines and can talk about operations is Lisa. So I'll pass it on to her.
So what I will say is we've had a myriad of feedback in terms of and across the spectrum in terms of performance. So there are users that once migrated, they're very happy because what they experience is they have larger throughput capability, so the network is more responsive for them. But the stories that probably get more attention are the ones where people are unhappy, and certainly we work on that as well. And so for instances where we don't have necessarily the most optimal performance feedback, it's a result of things that we've identified and we're certainly working to mitigate. And that comes from when previously migrated locations were migrated, they were migrated under the term called come as you are. And we're finding now that what needs to happen is there's some modifications that we need to implement in the local base post camps and stations to improve their network so that when they migrate into the JIE environment on a JRSS stack, that their performance is not negatively impacted by that. So you'll get a spectrum of answers. Certainly the negative ones I think are talking a little bit louder, but for those that migrated with no problems, they've been very happy, again, because they have bigger pipes and things are working a lot better.
And I'll add that, so in the past 6 weeks, Cyber Command has directed that we stand up a JRSS operational board, and so the JOB, and so JFHQ-DODIN is a co-chair of that, and we've instantiated our first meeting last month, and so that'll be that body that provides some consistency and guidance and direction across those eaches of the folks as they to establish what that sound and foundational baseline needs to look like, and then we can better one, sense and ascertain the data from a data perspective, but also defend it from a defense and depth perspective. So that's another initiative that we want to make sure we highlighted. So.
Yes, so. And we are no longer migrating as you are, so we have to make those changes for optimal performance once migrated.
Okay. Any other questions? Here we go, sir.
You mentioned standardizing the JRSS stack, yet you also mentioned having different flavors for different customers. Does that mean you might have different products or solutions in the JRSS stack? How do you reconcile those two?
No. So I'll answer first.
I can clarify what I said.
Oh, well, by all means.
I was going to say, clarifying. So right now, as we're from the DCO perspective, we're still figuring out how to work those tools appropriately. What is going to be the best source of sharing that data? So we're doing some different things right now as we're operationalizing the stack. So when we fully implement as a security stack, we have the right answers. Working very closely with DODIN and Cybercom underneath the JOB that they just stood up, having those controls. But we're making sure that as we talk to the services, what are the best TTPs and how we share it. But there will not be unique flavors because you can't with how those stacks are put together and how they affect everybody. We're testing different instances of how to share the data right now and what's the best way to look at it. But we're not changing the configuration of the stack, just the usage of the data to look at to provide those best TTPs.
So I'll add that maybe what he's talking about is so some communities have some more stringent rules, HIPAA and so forth. So they may have their communities of interest that may be, in a sense, kind of a customized, segment of the stack, but through the VRFs process that may be able to provide that mechanism that allows them to do those kinds of things.
Right. And so I guess to baseline everyone in the crowd, in case you're not familiar with necessarily how data flows through the stacks, each customer is separated from one another in what's called a VRF, a virtual route forwarding instance, that provides each customer its own private slice, if you will, through the entire stack that is independent and managed independent of all the rest virtually. So Lisa and her team manage the hardware and the OS level of all those devices. However, in what we call a multi-tenant environment where we have multiple administrators per device, that is what gives you that customization within your VRF on how you actually want to apply rules to your data. So one of the big clarifications that are out there, and one of the good things that we want to make sure that people come away with, is that though DISA is going to start running the hardware, we are not managing your data flow. You are still responsible for your data and the things, and taking care of your customers' data as it flows through your virtualized instance all the way through the stack. So I had to make a point at a previous conference that this is not about a jobs shifting or a jobs elimination kind of deal. There's still those folks who manage firewalls currently in their current environment. They are still needed to manage the firewalls for their virtual instance for their data, for their customers. So it is very important to understand that, because there's been a lot of angst, I guess, in some of the communities that don't understand that you are still fully responsible for the protections and the transport of your customers' data and the defense of it. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about strategy approach? DOD's talking about they're going to be increasing the pipe. They're going to be increasing the pipe to 100 gig, right? That's going to have impacts on you guys. Have you thought about? Can you talk a little about the strategy of how you're going to handle that? Or I mean, that's a tenfold increase in what you guys are. They're going from 10 gig, I think, to 100 gig.
So on the backbone, definitely going from 10 to 100 gig. And so that people's data can move faster, more seamlessly, and especially as a lot of what was considered just local data never traversed the WAN. In this architecture, it will start to traverse the WAN, so that you'll see that those numbers bump up. And right now we have the capability. We have two 10 gig links that go into the bottom of the stack. So those will increase over time. There is through our capacity, or not capacity, through our capacity line and our tech refresh line. That's how we will bump from 10G to 40G to 100G on this equipment to be able to keep pace. I don't know if there's an operational question in there or not.
I didn't hear one.
Okay.
Yeah, just part of
Yes.
growing and maturing the capability. So, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, we have run into some congestion on the backbone in the northeast area, which we had to. The good thing is that DISA already has this 100G plan, and so we just had to reshuffle a couple of the sites of how quickly they were getting their 100G to be able to handle some of the traffic of some of the users that were migrating in the northeast, and that was able to fix the congestion issue on the backbone, and then obviously that brings that into the stack a little quicker. And so again, we're working the one point of congestion that we have right now. We're working hard to eliminate. It's not that it's got more bandwidth or there's more bandwidth hitting the device than it's rated for. It's just that the type of traffic that it's getting is bogging down the processors in the piece of equipment. So we're looking to how to alleviate that, how to smooth that data flow.
And some of these realizations are known unknowns, just because we haven't organized the battle space to understand what the totality of what the environment looks like and and how to fully operationalize it. And so as we learn moving forward, and just like you have in any programmatic activity, you'll have adjustments and shifts, and we've grown from 20 years of administratively controlled networks where decisions were made based on efficiencies. But as we've learned in many painstakingly activities, an operational environment is not the same. So your large forcing function or activity is effectiveness. So this is a reconciliation of what between the Klinger-Cohen and administratively controlled networks and the Goldwater-Nichols and the Title X, operationalizing warfighting construct of networks, and then how we move forward in providing the directors and the commanders the decision space to make these decisions for their environments, and then how we optimize it moving forward in the totality. But 15,000 networks of networks federated over 20 years is a lot of capacity to figure out how to maneuver within. So.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Can I ask you to stand up to the mic? And if you have a question that you think you want to ask after her, it's okay to go ahead and queue up at the mic.
Ann Zimmerman with Sus Consulting. Who's going to manage the data brokering of the sensor data that's accumulated through the stack that would be used for analytics? No.
When you say data brokering, what do you mean data brokering?
You spoke earlier about sharing.
Correct.
The information. How is that going to be managed in the DISA and DODIN?
So I think right now, and I'll let Lisa follow up if she's got a better answer than me, but I mean, right now we're working through what those final TTPs are going to look like. I don't think we have a final, hey, this is how it's going to hierarchically be placed or how it's going to be shared. We're working through that. But the big thing for us is the accessibility for everybody, not necessarily keeping it stovepiped, which is what we have now. We have stovepiped, and we don't have the ability to share that information. The JRSS gives us the ability to have the JRSS becomes a data source in itself that shares the information, and then the services or the different customers or users can pull it for their population and understand the threats to their network, and that's going to feed up into our hierarchical aspects of how we're shaping DCO, and that's what Colonel Cochran talks about. Remember his chart with the triangle, being able to understand the network from top to bottom. That's what we're shaping and trying to do with this, but how it's finally the details of how that's going to be worked out, I don't have that yet, unless, Lisa, you have a better answer.
So we have a team actually that's responsible for the data and the sensors in our network right now, and so they will be
part of Acropolis?
Yes. Yes, it is. Okay. So the same team would be a part of that data brokering process, and they're looking at it right now. And certainly we'll be working with Amanda Vilwakin team as well as we progress it through the TTPs, et cetera. So we're all kind of working together.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I'll just add that, this data sharing that they're talking about is usually in a position of reactive or deficit from a adversary perspective. So we obviously want to get ahead of that and be more proactive, so that we're less concerned about the big data problem and more concerned about mission assurance for all the components to be able to do their mission essential tasks and functions.
Okay. Next question. We're only about halfway down our time period, so there's plenty of time.
Good morning, Chuck Whittaker, BMC Software. Colonel Griffin, it's good to meet you after.
Chuck, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Colonel Cochran had made reference to one directive that had already come down from Cyber Command, Is its role of influence going to be having an additional impact on JRSS? And if so, can we get some comments from the panel regarding that?
Certainly. I would definitely say yes, but I'll let Jordan Cochran really get to the details.
In terms of the policy and the operational board, so they will retain the higher headquarters, strategic lens of defense in depth, and then work the up and out towards the DoD, towards SecDef and CI with CIO, and then the policy or the operational board will look at it from at the operational level of war and then down. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that
yeah.
helps out.
So
I was from an operational standpoint. I was wondering if it's going to trickle down from more of a tactical impact on JRSS versus strictly policy.
So policy, and not the terms of traditional policy. Policy is in like what's the operating environment look like or need to look like, and how do we best optimize it from a technical policy perspective, and then we'll look towards synchronization and partnering and benchmarking that across the entirety of all the stacks, if that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And again, we just our headquarters is only 3 years old, so we've lots of learning and lots of maturation that we've been going over the last 12 to 18 months, and so this is part of that as we continue to work towards full mission capability over the next year or so.
Great, thank you. Follow-up, another question regarding the interaction between JMS and BMS and what's going on between Army and DISA as far as those two programs.
Okay, so JMS, the Joint Management System, and BMS, the Base Management System. BMS is a concept that the Army developed in order to ensure that they had end-to-end visibility down into the land and all the way up to the top part of the JRSS stack. So they get that much closer to that one holistic picture. So that is the Army has bought into that vision, and my program office is responsible for funding and deploying out the JMS and the JRSS stacks. However, when we come to an installation, we say, hey, look, if you want to go with the BMS, these are the things you need to do to be able to integrate and to be able to purchase and fund that. So that is something that is a service or agency responsibility if that's what they want to do. So currently with the Army, they are in the process of resourcing the hardware. There is a small hardware component to it, and then there's a larger licensing component to it in order to be able to fully field that out. And they've got it at a number of locations, and they're happy with the visibility that they have, and they want to make sure that's the standard across all of their migrated installations. Do you have any comment? I don't know. No. Okay. Did that answer your question, sir? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Meg Weinberg. I work for MITRE. I know Colonel Griffin, not the other people. Thank you very much. I have a question. I'm trying to take all the information and kind of put it together. And so I listened to the 3 briefings that you folks did, and I'm trying to just understand the relationship. So for Joint Force Headquarters DODIN, there are 42 DoD components that do cyber ops and cyber defense. And so some subset of that is related to JRSS because DODIN's bigger than JRSS. So I'm making statements, but they're really kind of questions. And then when Colonel Straub talked about the DCO and the JRSS DCO working group, and Colonel Whittaker talked about the Global Ops Command and the CSSP mission, I'm just trying to put those 3 things together. So if you're creating TTPs, are those then going to be for JRSS DCO, I guess, are those going to be used by the Global Ops Command? Is that kind of how this works?
So since I'm kind of the glue that's kind of behind the scenes, so my team, I work for DISA. I'm providing staff support to Lisa's team that's on the ground, and they're working very, very hard. And I'm kind of working through the DoD DCO community to get the information, because the final authority will be forwarded to DODIN, who has the ability to make the decision to say, here are the rules, here's how we're going to operate. So for instance, the small change in come as you are, the authority for us to tell the services what to do will come from Colonel Cochran, and he can speak more to that. My team is just kind of behind the scenes doing staff work, supporting the PMO and Colonel Whittaker's team, so I can get the information to DODIN, because as you heard him say, they're standing up, they're new, they have this huge area of responsibility. So my team is assisting with the staff work to develop it. I don't have the approval authority. Approval authority comes from Colonel Cochran, then it will flow down through the organization. I don't know if anyone else wants to explain better.
The DISA Global is the day-to-day technical operation, beeps and squeaks of the actual environment. And then as things need to, as issues or impacts elevate, then Colonel Straub's team will take those and then figure out what the best recommendations are for the totality of the environment, and then JFHQ-DODIN would then baseline it across all the components, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the stepping stones of the.
We're very embedded. We talk daily. It's a shared relationship. I'm trying to help. That's really the reality of what I do for Colonel Whittaker.
So what happens is we have team members that communicate with both entities on a daily basis, and we provide operational input. And based on what we're experiencing, what TTPs would be helpful, what is going to make us better. And so we provide that input, it's codified, and then it's ordered, and then everything moves on from there, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Next question.
Morning, guys. I'm James Curry with DISA. So JRSS has evolved a lot over the last couple of years. Like, it's continuing to evolve. So I'm kind of curious, looking a year or 2 years forward from now, what is something that gets you excited? It's like, JRSS is cool now, but wait till you see what we can do 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Wait till you see where it's going. What gets you guys excited of, man, I can't wait till I can do this?
Well, I'll tell you what gets me excited for the plan forward, and I think that they'll always be able to tell you about certain capability they may be looking forward to. But for me, the next 12 to 18 months, I'm going through a tech refresh to really get after some of the latest and greatest of the technologies that are out there within the certain capabilities we already have. And that is really looking forward to that. But what really gets me excited is 3 to 4 years from now, when we start going completely virtualization. We get ourselves down into that software-defined networking, the network function virtualization, and really getting after that to really shrink this footprint and getting us much closer to, I think, where the industry is headed, and the capabilities that are just becoming nascent now. I'd love to say we're going to go to that in our tech refresh right now, but at the bandwidths that we're dealing with, very, very hard to find products that can still keep pace with that, and also still be able to communicate with the other technologies that are next to it. There are some that can do the function at the bandwidth, but it comes out very rough for the next function in line.
As someone who's building your virtual JRSS, that is an exciting answer.
There we go. All right, but I don't know. Is there a capability you're looking forward to?
I am. So I'm looking forward to the stabilization of JRSS, followed by the consolidation of all of the data so that we can start looking at the analytics, getting left a boom of any type of activity based on that rapid occurrence of identifying nefarious behavior and responding. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and just a second, what Colonel Whittaker just said. Right now, DCO, there's pocket of excellences throughout DoD. The Army has some things that they do exceptionally well. The Air Force has some things they do exceptionally well. And when you look at how DCO is done, what JRSS is going to start to bring all that together. We're going to be able to share our threats, and it's not going to have to be through the IC community or through some stovepipe channel or through a memo or an email. It's actually going to be through the data source. And we're going to be faster, more flexible, more agile, and being able to thwart our enemies and what they're trying to do within our network. So for me, from a DCO perspective, I'm ready to get there because I think it's going to help immensely.
Yeah, I'll just add that the ability to maneuver the Department of Defense Information Network is critical. And when I say maneuver, that's to ebb and flow through virtualization, so that when you have occurrences of badness or maliciousness, that you can segment that off, put it in another area, and then rebuild to provide that, rebuild and at speed to provide the capabilities that were previously in existence and that were potentially impacted. So there is virtually no impact across the customer base in the end. So that's great.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Next question. So if I could tack on to the end of that answer, the other thing that I'm really excited about is once we get all that data in one spot, is really to get after the latest techniques in machine learning and AI to really get after those nuances and get to the predictive that they're talking about. Right now, I think we're having a real hard time with the way our data is stored and fractured to really be effective in using any kind of the modern and emerging machine learning and AI techniques that are out there. So that gets me to be able to provide that pool of data that's consistent and then be able to provide the platforms to be able to do that. I think that's going to be a huge win for the department. And I think this is on the critical path to be able to provide that. Any other questions? I don't want to hold people just to hold people. Because it's not that people have no sure to wander off anyway. I would like to thank my fellow panel members for taking their time to be here today. We wanted to make sure that I particularly wanted to make sure that the message was getting out there because as Lisa alluded to earlier, there's been a whole lot of 6 o'clock news and not a whole lot of Good Morning America as far as the JRSS program has been concerned, because we've been allowing the NetOps reporting to do all the storytelling, and there are a number of successes out there. You don't hear them that often because it's when the people have an outage is when they're really unhappy. So, and as you say, as all experienced communicators know, no one, you don't hear anything from them when things are going well. You never get a pat on the back. It's only when things aren't going well. That's when they start. People start bringing the phone off the hook and blowing up your email box. So I appreciate you all taking some time today. I'd like everybody to look over to the side of the room over there and give Kyle a little round of applause for setting up the mics and stuff and make sure that we sound better than we actually are. But subject to that, I know myself and a couple of the panel members will be up here if you want to continue to have a one-on-one conversation. And thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.